and welcome to this vlog for our 65th auction here at Scotch Whisky Auctions. Big Peatrie back to tell you, to take you through, to show you, to generally gesticulate in the general direction of these absolutely fantastic whiskies which we have in this auction. I do apologise, I have a bit of a cold this month, but that's not going to stop me getting really excited about the quality of whisky that we have in this auction. Now, we have a lot of bottles lined up here today. As always, these bottles are they are there to explain and to help us guide. They're also there as examples and representative of themes, of collections, of whole ideas within this auction. So this is just a very brief overview for what is a wonderfully deep auction in terms of quality and some really interesting bottles of whisky. So without further ado, we're going to get on and start. So first of all, we have Springbank. Now this is one of 6 bottles. This is a Springbank from the Door Gods series. Now what we have in this auction are the 3 different releases, which is 6 bottles in total of the Door Gods as one lot. Now this one here is from the first selection, and this was selected by Charles McLean. Now there are a lot of people in this world that add a certain amount of weight to whisky. Now Charles McLean, who is one of the best, one of the greatest living authorities on whisky, selects a whisky, you know it's going to be a good one. This is one of 6, an absolutely beautifully designed bottle and a great way to kick off our vlog. Next up we have a Tom and Tool. Now we don't feature a lot of Tom and Tool in the auction. It's a whisky that's a very well thought of blend, but it doesn't maybe get people shouting about it from the top of the world. But in this case it has the Samaroli name on the bottle. Silvano Samaroli was one of the first people, 1968, to start bottling single cask whiskies, and has been responsible over the years for bottling some of the very best expressions of single malt and rum. Incredible wealth of knowledge, an incredible palate, and a nose for picking some of the, as I said, finest whiskies you're going to come across. Now this one here was distilled in 1967, which was a year before Silvano started his company. It's 44 years old, and he says that after a certain amount of time that it tends to peak in the cask. So if he has selected this whisky, you know you've got something really special. Next up we have the first of 2, what I'm going to term whisky wars, or little fights, or playground kind of tactics between 2 very similar types of whisky, 2 very similar heavyweights, weight categories of whisky. And first up we have blended whisky from Japan. The first up here we have Nikka's Taketsuru 35-year-old, named after Makasato Taketsuru, the grandfather of Japanese whisky. This 35-year-old blend contains whisky from Miyagikyo and from Yochi, and is one of these drams that gets the kind of reviews that most other drams can only dream of. An absolutely beautiful example of the range of spirits that can be created from within a very small number, only 2 distilleries. And now Yamazaki do the same thing, because in Japan they don't interchange, they don't swap casks the way we do in Scotland in the same way. So all styles must be created within the distillery. So in this respect they have different shaped stills. They have some that are direct fired, they have some that are internally heated. They have the barley peated at different levels, they put it into different casks. They use Mizunara, they use oak, they use bourbon oak, they use sherry oak, but they use all of these different combinations, and what that results in is an incredible palette with which to create whisky. So the Nikka bottle there was founded by Masataka Taketsuru, and this one here is the Yamazaki single malt from the first company to start producing whisky with the help of Masataka Taketsuru, and this one is the Yamazaki 35-year-old. Now this is another whisky that is just a wonderful example of a company and an ethos that started out trying to replicate Scotch whisky, and then over the years they have worked out a way of producing Japanese whisky, and brilliant Japanese whisky. So 2 35-year-olds from competing companies from Japan. Next up we have 2 regulars from the vlog in one bottle. It's Macallan and it's Gordon MacPhail. Now this is a 68-year-old Macallan bottle for their Spey Malt range. We couldn't bring you one quite as old as the 75 from last month, but I think you'll let us off with 68 years in the cask from this one in Spey malt, which was distilled in 1945. Now, obviously, you've been seeing this rather impressive display case in front of me as I've been talking here, and this is for the Dalmore Candela. Now, the Candela is named after the International Unit for the Measurement of Brightness, and this has been considered one of Dalmore's brightest creations. It's 50 years old and contains spirit that was distilled in 1868. That kind of whisky is, I mean, there's hen's teeth and then there's fillings in hen's teeth rareness. This is one of these bottles, beautifully presented in a handmade decanter with just the tasting notes. Again, people who have been lucky enough to try this whisky, it seems destined to become one of the great drams, incredibly well thought of, with wonderful, wonderful spirit. Next up is another distillery that has a great place of fondness in many, many people's hearts, one of the great distilleries from Speyside, and that's Balvenie. The Balvenie here is 50 years old and distilled in 1937. So this one here was distilled before the Second World War began, matured, looked after and aged and then bottled. This kind of whisky, again, it's not something you're going to get hold of on a regular basis. This is rare, hard to find whisky with people who have looked after whisky, nurtured that whisky to the peak of its perfection, basically. Next up, we have two different ways of viewing the same distillery. First up, they're both distilled in 1966, and they're both from Balblair. This one is the official bottling, bottled at 38 years old, and this one is from Gordon MacPhail and bottled at 39 years old. The reason I've chosen these two is, we've talked about this a couple of times, there's official bottlings and there's independent bottlings. So what you can do in this auction is buy two whiskies from the same distillery, which have been bottled at, I believe, almost the same strength, 44 and 43%. But you can look, even just the colour in these different bottles here shows you that there's going to be differences. So you can pour yourself a dram from the same year, from the same distillery, and go through the differences and the intricacies of a really, really wonderful, wonderful distillery. Now, I've talked a lot, obviously, we've got blends and single malts here. The last two bottles are a little bit different and a little bit out of the norm. Now, the reason for this is, with the rise of the success of sales of single malt whisky, for those of us who are maybe on a slightly smaller budget, you can't try these great drams from, you know, back in the 1930s, back in the 1940s. But what you can maybe get a hold of is blended whisky from that time. Now, this is still the style, it's a dominant style of whisky that's drunk in the world, and it's the style that launched Scotch whisky across the world to become the world's favourite premier elite ultra brand spirit. So, first up we have here the House of Macdonald 1933. Now, this whisky was aged for 26 years before it was bottled. Now, it was pretty uncommon at that point to bottle whisky at that kind of age. Now, they were aging it for a long time. They knew about the quality of the cask. In 1937, they bottled this Balvenie, and they've also done it with Springbank, who aged one from 1919. So it was happening, but it's not particularly common. But it does mean that this whisky, blended together and kept for 26 years, a ridiculously brilliant chance to take a snapshot of a bygone era. We've said it before, liquid history, footprints in the past, all of this kind of stuff. And this bottle here is a Highland Queen 21-year-old. Now, the reason I've selected this one is that things that you can't try anymore are things like Highland Queen. Highland Queen did contain a large portion of Glenmorangie. Now, Glenmorangie is not something that you get in blends. They make a big deal out of the fact that none of their whisky goes into blends. But they bought Glenmorangie, Highland Queen bought Glenmorangie to ensure they had a core malt for the blend. So this means that there is whisky in here from Glenmorangie bottled at 21 years old. It gives you a chance to taste these things, to try something out with the norm. A chance to taste why whisky is such, it's why it excites me so much, why it excites you so much, why it excites the world so much. And these bottles give you that chance, a look back into the past. Now, there's an awful lot of whisky here. There's even more in this month's auction. And as always, I really do urge you, when we go live tomorrow, take your time, go through the auction, see what there is. There are such a range of styles and types of whisky this month. It's a brilliant, brilliant auction. So, ladies and gentlemen, remember, Scotch Whisky Auctions. don't lose your bottle.